How's it going?
All right, we're seeing some people pour in. And I recognize Jimmy.
Yeah, I remember Jimmy. He was at Decisions Days.
Yeah.
Bank of Oklahoma, I think, right?
Yeah, I worked with them on a project.
That's cool.
So welcome to the Lunch and Learn. I'm your host today. My name is Noah Young. I'm on the professional services team. We got a couple of y'all here. Then I'll just open the floor to any questions that you guys have. All right. Yeah, what do you got for me, Jimmy?
So I'm having an issue with active form validation rules. So I'm trying to set a field that if it's a past date, that it doesn't let you continue. I get it to where it will, if it's a current or future date, it will clear the validation. I've got it where it will give me the error message if it's a past date, but it's still letting me proceed in the flow. It's not giving me a fatal error.
Okay. That's interesting. Let me go ahead and try and set up something on my end. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
Jimmy, when you set up that active form flow, did you check the checkbox that says apply this active form flow on the specific outcome that you're looking for?
I did not. Is that the key?
Yeah, I've run into the issue before. I actually thought it was a dev breaking issue, and I reported to the devs, and one of them got in contact with me promptly and just said that because we switched from our old validation rules from just rules in Decision 6 to actually flows, that now you have to check that box that says apply this active form flow to a specific outcome, or you can apply it to all outcome paths. But once you check that, it should stop the form from proceeding until that validation has been cleared.
That makes sense.
Awesome. So yeah, let me go ahead and get a button on there so we can have an outcome. And then, yeah, so by default, it's not going to run for any particular outcome. So like Jared said, you'll have to either choose the outcome you want or choose run on all outcomes.
That's too easy. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Your pleasure. Sometimes it's the simple issues that always seem the most difficult, but in reality are just
I know, right?
click of a button.
At least it's a good learning experience. I won't do that again.
Absolutely.
All right. Anybody else have any questions? All right, nobody's raising hands or putting anything in the question and answer section. So, Jared, you do training. So, do you have anything that you can show these guys that you think would be worthwhile?
Not on the top of my head, unfortunately. I don't have a project that I built. I think the only one that I really have is a request that Jimmy wanted was the generic document creation, but that's already on my YouTube channel, so I don't think I really want to walk through that. But yeah, sorry, man.
All right, looks like we have somebody else that joined. So do you have a question for us?
While we're waiting, I can show off something, I think.
Okay, because I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I want to show off. And
okay, then let me. I don't think I'm co-host. Sabrina, can I be co-host? I don't have power. Yeah, if you can stop your screen share, I'll share.
All right, cool. Yep, let me stop that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I think this one's really cool. I've really enjoyed learning about kind of raw SQL steps and decisions, or SQL steps and decisions, where you can, if you're an SQL wizard and you know some how to write SQL queries, you can utilize some steps in the decisions toolbox to one, report on it, and then second, you can also use them as flow steps. So this is like raw SQL, and I'm pretty sure Noah would know this better than me, raw SQL step tests. And let's see what the chat's got.
Actually, on professional services team, we steer away from using raw SQL stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
we prefer to set up the defined queries.
Ah, then that'll be a way I'll show that as well. So
Awesome.
we have this step in the in decisions of flow step called the raw SQL step, which allows you to write a query, and depending on what your current connection is, so select asterisk. Let's do that one. So select asterisk from dbo.entity account. This is just the query that all it does, it just fetches the accounts folder just as a query. And so when I run this, I can tell it to return the data. You can create your own type if you want. And in this case, since it is just the accounts, I'm just going to type as account and decisions framework. And then when I debug this step, I'll go down the done path, and you'll see that it just grabbed all of the accounts within my system. And I think I have about 16 accounts. I have 16 accounts in my system. So this is a way where you can just write a query that says, hey, I want to be able to get some data for a query. Let's say you want to like filter out, you have this huge database table that you're trying to connect to, but you only want certain pieces of data from that. The best thing you can do there is you can write a query to filter out the data you want and use what databases are good for, kind of limiting the data that you want out of a large database table, and then getting that into decisions. This also helps if you have multiple connections. So if I have a database integration, right, and I want to use an external database connection, I can do that as well. So if I'm using MySQL, Oracle, or PostgreSDB, I can be able to get those pieces of information from there and just write a query there. So this step's pretty interesting. But as Noah said, what they do in best practice is to write their own defined query. And so I think it's what, create data types and integrations, right? Add a query, right? Isn't that what you're talking about, Noah?
Yep. Yeah, that's the right one.
Okay, perfect. So instead of doing it that way, just writing SQL, you can just do it by creating data types and integrations. You go to database integration, and then you can just add a query. And it's kind of like the step, but it's just kind of broken up in different pieces. So in the flow step, we had to define the connection. Here, all we have to do is we define the connection for this form before we get the actual flow step. Then you hit next. You can give the query a name. So I can say this is fetch.
Hold on a second, Jared. Joshua
Sure.
Vogel's raising his hand. I'm gonna let him talk.
Sure, absolutely.
I just want to talk with you guys about the raw SQL step. So when you keep on going, but I have a lot to say about how this is implemented.
Sure. All right. Yeah. So okay, I'll finish this bit and then I'll let you. I want to hear your thoughts on the raw SQL step. So
yeah,
this is similar. You just set up the database integration. I'm going to say this is JR get accounts. Get all accounts, which I actually think I can't have spaces. Yep, I can't have spaces. So you can't have spaces, so you'll have to remove the spaces. And then I can write my query here. Select asterisk from dbo.entity_account. And then I can run the query to make sure that it is valid. And I can see that it is because it returned these rows successfully. And then I can click OK. Once that has completed, I can go back into my flow where that new flow step will be compiled. And I believe if I go to database and I go to, where is it, integration? I always get these confused. Let's check integration. Integration database. Now I should have a advanced, that's the raw SQL step.
Is it under local connection there?
Thank you. I always forget where it's at. Integration, database, and then there should be a local connection. And then you can see I have my query that I created to get that specific type and execute that query. So anytime you use the create data types and integrations to create a query, you're always going to find that in the connection that you've created it in, and then the step will be there.
Yeah,
All
see, I
right,
always
Josh.
just search them by name.
You can do that too. If you
Yeah.
don't want to know the category, you can just search for it. And there you go.
So in my use case, when I need to do queries against an external database, I use raw SQL almost exclusively. And the reason for that is that, and I think I've discussed this with support, so maybe you know more or you can guide me, is that I can't select a schema in runtime. So what happens is across my environment, so like our environments are numbered based on which stage you're at. So like dev is 1, blank blank, and QA is 2 blank blank, and so on and so forth. So if I want to be able to move the entire project between the environments and still be able to hit the correct schema as part of the database, which I need to do as the user that I'm set up as in the database in my company, I need to be I need to be able to choose the correct schema based on environment. And so in order to achieve that, I actually created like my own reusable subflow that based on constants in each environment, I can go ahead and run a truth table that chooses the correct environment to run the SQL in. So I otherwise I always try to use a stored procedure, one of these stored objects here to run the query. But in my particular case, the way our environments are set up, I can't use the stored ones. So I just sort of want to highlight that as one of the reasons why raw SQL might be required to that extent.
Gotcha. So from what I'm understanding, just so I clarify, so you have like different servers. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You have different servers, and I'm assuming they're different database flavors or styles. So like Oracle, MySQL, or something like that.
No,
and you have to form the query.
they're all like I have all of our databases that, at least in this project I'm referring to, they're all Oracle databases. But depending on the stage of development you're in, the schema is numbered differently. So it's not like it's always the same schema across all the environments. I mean,
Okay.
that might very well be a problem with like how our company is set up. That's totally possible, but that's how it is, and it's not something they're gonna change just for decisions. So so we have schema 100, so to speak, for development, schema 200 for QA. In order to move them between environments in our decisions development process, we need to be able to we need to be able to change that schema in the query, and there's no way to do that with stored procedures or stored values or variables in Oracle SQL, at least. So so that's so if there I haven't put this in as a feature request, but having the ability to like give decisions some knowledge about how the schemas are set up in each environment, so that we can have those procedures move quickly between them. Right, obviously, because it would be it's annoying to change if I'm reusing the query. It's annoying to change it in every 10 places, which is what the the advantage is. But the way we're set up, we can't leverage that.
Gotcha, because there's no way to get that schema detail into decisions. Is that what you're talking about?
There's no way without running creating my own, what I call a multi-schema SQL subflow to tell it on each query what to do. So I have like a 5-step query, right? So there's four elements. It's the it's the the schema I need, the environment I'm in, the opening clause of the query and the closing clause of the query. And I send that all in, and based on those factors, it chooses the right thing and compiles this raw SQL and sends it off. A limitation, I almost ran into, I did run into a limitation even on that, and that I can't easily create a join statement with this. So so even my solution is only 50-75%. I'd have to create a new subflow in order to do a join.
Yeah, to get that information.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at on raw SQL versus the stored queries.
Gotcha. Creating a database, like writing the query, but having it as a raw SQL command.
Right. So I write it. I basically write it I write it on
yeah, it comes out of a truth table, and then like boom, comes into the SQL command that runs it. Yeah, right. I gotcha.
And
that's
I was cool. Right. Yeah, it is cool. It's very cool. And I was told I was told that there's barely any performance impact because every time you run one of these stored ones, it still opens up the connection anew. So it's not like the connection stays open when you have these, and it's just so from a performance standpoint, it's not that much of an impact either.
Okay, that's good. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Josh. That's really cool information to have.
Yeah, no problem. You started talking about it, I was like, oh, I know all about raw SQL stuff because I use them all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'll pass it back off to you now.
Well, unfortunately, I still don't have anything that I'd want to talk about. Oh, there we go. Jimmy's got another question. What you got, Jimmy?
Since we got topics, so I'm not that great with SQL, but since we're on the topic, so if we have a massive database, right? Say accounts, and I'm wanting to do a query, but I don't want to necessarily pull all, say, 50 fields from that query. I just want like a list of the account numbers. Is there a way to like do a quick query of just that one field so that it runs quicker versus pulling like the whole database?
I mean, yeah, that's exactly what we would use like a defined query for, because you can write that select statement to just say select that column.
And just pull those values versus all the data.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example? I'm not.
I go over here. So I'll just pull it up in the query editor. Where's my
yeah. I also think another thing you could do is when you define your query, like I showed earlier, you can use like the variables, which I think is the at. The at sign is a special character for the variables, and then it will create a flow variable for that query around that flow step. So you can dynamically map in like, hey, if I want to select email address from the any accounts table where it equal jared@decisions.com, and then in the where part I said just at email, and then email would be a variable that I can pack in the flow.
Yeah, it's kind of what got me on that track. So if I wanted like all the email addresses though, but I don't care about first name, last name, company, I just want a whole list of email addresses, I would just put would the SQL query be a lot faster than a fetch?
Yeah, because the fetch would be pulling in all of the data of all of your accounts. Yep. So like if you want just the emails, you can do what I've done here of just select whichever column you're wanting to pull from. And then it's the entity account table is where decisions accounts live.
Gotcha.
So like if I change this to email address, I believe it is. I got some data. Yeah, there we go.
Cool.
That, yeah, if you're just wanting a string list of email addresses and you don't care about all of the other account data, you can just set up a query.
And that works on outside database too.
Get email.
Like if we're going to do an API call.
For database integration you're talking about?
Yeah, so we're going to have an
Mhm.
outside database that we're going to have to get an API call to get a token. And I'm just trying to think of ways that we can, because when we first do the call, we just want like a list of account numbers. We don't care about any other data. And then once they select what account they want, then we want to do another query to get that data to kind of keep it quick so that it's not pulling
Okay.
all the accounts, all data.
And so this is an API call into decisions, or this is an API
from
call that decisions is making out to another service.
To another database, yes.
Okay. I mean, that would come down to.
And it's that project
whatever.
that you helped build with Natalie, where we're
Yeah.
doing that. We've got that mock data, but once we get that actual data, we're going to be pulling the data from that database.
So would you have to be interacting with that database through an API call?
Well, not initially.
That's just what I'm not familiar with.
We just want to grab, like I said, a list of accounts, so that then once they select that account, we can do another query to get the data we need.
Yeah, because if it's through an API call, it would just be however the API itself is actually configured. That would handle that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
but
if you read the documentation on that
database call from decisions, if you go into integrations databases, you can integrate with an external database here, and then you can like configure the server name, the database name, and then you can use this connection when you make those SQL steps and you make SQL queries and things.
Gotcha.
But if it's an actual API system, it would just be down to however that API is configured.
Yeah. Okay.
I know most API documentation that I've viewed, Jimmy, it will tell you, like, if it's well written, it will tell you, hey, this is how you can get this call for this data, and here's how you can then filter out that data within the call. So you can say, hey, like, let's say, I don't know the specifics, but for example, let's say it's a JSON body you're sending, and you're saying, hey, I want to get all accounts, bank accounts where no at decisions is tied to, right? All his bank accounts, right? Then what you could do is in that JSON body that you're sending to that database is that you would have that as a variable within the flow, and you can say, hey, I want to send this one, and then that API call would take that input, go to the database call, get that data, filter out that data, and then only retrieve the information that you wanted. So that's how that would do it if it has to be an API call. But I think the best way is if you can use a database integration like Noah just showed, that would be the best way to kind of get the data, because then you could just use SQL and kind of use what databases are good for, which is like filtering out large sets of data and only getting what you need.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we still got a little while. Any other questions? All right. Let me think if I can think of anything fun that I've done before. I see. Folder view type. Oh yeah, no, this is something else. That was a thing we were extending folders with. I was thinking this was just my thing that would take in folder names and create folders for them, but this one's more complicated than that. Liam, you got anything? All right.
I got one more thing I can show. I
right.
don't know if
Yeah,
I
go
showed a
for
lot
it.
of people. Let's see. Let me share my screen. I recently just found this step, and I don't think I've talked about it too much, but there is this cool step in decisions. So, can you even see my screen? Really cool
Yep.
step. I think it's like get object something.
Get object properties.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's fun to work with.
Is either this one or this one? I think it's
So
this.
get property names on object gives you a list of names
Yeah, and
of
I'm
like
assuming
the
it
actual
would,
data names. Get property, you give it a data name, and it returns the data at that name on your object.
the data at the name. So you have to show me how to use this one, because this is the one that I know where it's like if you
Mhm.
want to grab a list of, let's just do create data. If I wanted to grab, let's see, this is my test account. The account data structure. And let me set this to a constant. Okay, it's already a constant. Perfect. And let's say you just wanted to grab all of the the names as a list of strings. This step will get it to you. So I can just take test account. And then when I debug this, it should show you all like 32 properties.
It did not like that.
It did not like that. And I think it's because it's null. Input values, no data. Really cool step. I think it's null. That's why. So if I just add some values,
Or you can select an account on the left there.
I could, yeah, we'll just do that. So if you need to, you can just select any values. It doesn't have to be anything specific, just to pass in. So we'll say this is, pick that. And then when I debug it, now it will, there we go. It will give you all of the properties on the account. So you can see there's 73 properties for that account decisions framework. This was helpful. Kind of shout out to Jimmy and I forgot who, I think it was Natalie who was asking about the generic document creation. I showed that step there because it allowed you to say, hey, I want to know what are the properties that I need to put on, let's say, a generic invoicing document.
Mhm.
And then you can get those property names, and then you can fetch the data that you want and fill it out there. That was a cool step that I learned about when creating that. And so I always keep this one in my back pocket. And this
Yeah, no,
one
that's
I've never
definitely-
used. So go ahead.
Yeah, so that get property names is definitely a great step when you're dealing with an object that you don't necessarily know what fields it has coming into it. It allows you to do things more dynamically. And then get property kind of works hand in hand with that, because what the get property names is giving us is the names. So with get property on object, you can take a name, put that as the property path, and then pass in that same object. So like, yeah, if you just do first, and then give it the same account that you gave get property names,
Mhm.
and then run this, that step will give us the value associated with that. So like if you collapse your inputs.
So output this one.
Well, no, look at get property on object. It's just, let's look at the output from that.
The output, okay. Done.
Just says done.
I don't think I configured it right.
What'd you pass in? Let's look at the inputs. Oh, no, I meant
I
like
passed
in the debugger. I wanted to make sure that it got
in the debugger.
a property name like we were expecting.
I passed in the target
So collapse target
language.
language name.
Maybe that's just not maybe I don't. Oh, it doesn't have a value in it. That's why.
Okay. So let's.
The last one should. So let's use the last one because I should
there we
get
go.
this.
Deleted on does have something, and that's the last one.
Yeah.
There.
So then we'll edit this first. Do the last. Then. Or maybe it doesn't.
Okay, I don't think it was actually the last then. Like it's the last on our object, but the last on our list is custom sort description. So rather than using an item from the list, let's just take something that we see has data in it. So you can do like created by last login date, email address, any of those field names. We don't necessarily have to take it from our list, but it would allow you to like get names on object and loop through. And you can like use this step. There's also set property on object. That's a lot of fun to use.
So I can set this as a constant to that. And then
now we'll be getting back whatever is associated with entity name on our object. Yeah.
Got you. Which in this case would be
Um,
admin decision.
And so let's
Okay.
go back into the flow, into the flow designer.
Yeah.
Because where you can actually find this step is get rid of your search, go into data, and then advanced. And then that's where we have the get property names, get property on object, set property on object. And so, yeah, these allow you to more dynamically work with your objects. That you can find out what the fields on it are named. You can get the value associated with that field. You can set the value associated with that field, all in a much more dynamic way. So for instance, a way that I plan on using it on the project that I'm working on is we'll have a list of fields that need to be changed. And so that list would be populated some point earlier in the flow. So it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. We don't know at design time what fields they are or how many fields. We're just generating a string list of fields. So we can use for each through that string list of fields, and then use set property on object to change those specific fields.
So probably not quite like this, but kind of something maybe similar to that. Like let's say in this case, I wanted to do every update everything.
Yeah, if you wanted to update all of the fields, you could
I can do
take just
something
like the field
this.
names and pass it like
Yeah.
that. And then also another
Obviously,
really
go ahead.
fun step. So close your little your little search there, and let's go back into data.
Data advanced.
I don't know about advanced. I need to trying to remember where it is. So just open data for now. Let me see it. Scroll down. Scroll back up. Data pair. Go into data pair. There's another fun step in here. Object properties to data pairs. Because what this will do is take your object and give you a list of data pairs that is the name of the field and the value of the field. So like if you just want the property names, you can use get property names. But if you actually want the values that are associated with those property names, you can use this data pairs step. And it will create data pairs for you that have the name of the property and the value of that property.
Gotcha. So if I just passed in, so I want to see, let's get this to work. So if I figure it, how would so what would I input to get that? Let's say I wanted to have it to say entity name and
names off of here.
Okay.
We don't need that.
Okay.
And you can just pass your account to this. And when we look at it in the debugger, it'll look weird just because the debugger kind of works on data pairs already, kind of. So if we look at it in the debugger, when we look at the output, it'll look like just our account again.
Gotcha, it's the same thing.
But
because
if you go to use it somewhere, it is actually a list of data pairs now, and you'll be able to like go through this list. So that's something else you can do if you need to like dynamically crawl through an object that you don't know at design time what exactly the object is or what all its fields are, or if you want to account for change, because at design time it could have these 5 fields, but then 2 months down the line somebody else adds 2 more fields. You would have to adjust for that, or if you did something with this, it would already be having those extra 2 because it just takes the object and whatever properties it has, puts it out. So yeah, these steps are
the list of data pairs, right? Yep.
Yeah. So these steps are great for doing things in a more dynamic manner that helps you pivot when your data types grow and shrink and change names on things.
No, that makes sense. That's really cool. Okay.
So yeah, no, I like these. Thanks for bringing these up.
Yeah, no, thanks for explaining, because I couldn't figure out, I've been messing around with the data pair step for a long time and I couldn't figure out how to use it, but now I get it. So that is awesome.
And if we've got no further questions, So last call for questions. Jimmy, David, Josh, any of you guys have anything? All right, then we are good to end it. Thank you guys for coming.